My name is Elena Ramirez, 34 years old, and I am the resident failure of the Ramirez film dynasty. Behind my simple lab coat and worn-out sneakers, I'm hiding a secret that would make my status-obsessed relatives choke on their vintage champagne. Tonight, at the lavish gala celebrating the 50th anniversary of Ramirez Pictures, my sister, Victoria, will give her usual speech about family legacy. She has no idea that tomorrow morning, my face is on the cover of Wired magazine, and the family's longtime manager, David, already has an advanced copy. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Let me know your story down in the comments. I grew up in Pasadena, in a sprawling Spanish colonial house where every room smelled like old scripts and expensive cigars. Our family wasn't just in the film industry. In our minds, we were the film industry. Ramirez Pictures wasn't just a company, it was a dynasty. My father, Michael Ramirez, was the patriarch. His value system was simple. Success was measured in gold statues and glowing reviews in Variety. He didn't just want successful children, he wanted heirs to his legacy. My mother, Susan, was the guardian of that legacy. A woman who valued Hollywood's social norms and appearances above all else. And then there was my older sister, Victoria. She was the perfect heir. Victoria followed the script flawlessly. She was president of her sorority, graduated top of her class from the USC School of Cinematic Arts, and immediately landed an executive job at a major studio. She married Matthew Hayes, a tech venture capitalist who looked good in photos and understood which producers to flatter. Victoria was exactly what my parents wanted. I was different. While Victoria was memorizing classic film dialogue, I was fascinated by the systems behind the stories. I wasn't interested in screenplays. I was interested in the mathematical patterns that made a story work. The logic of why an audience felt a certain way. My parents tolerated my hobby, assuming I'd eventually grow out of it and take my place in the family business. When I got into the USC Film School, just like Victoria, there was a collective sigh of relief. Finally, I was conforming, but halfway through my second year, I sat in a genomics lecture purely by accident, just tagging along with a friend, and everything clicked. The professor was talking about mapping genetic code, about finding patterns in the chaos of human biology. It wasn't just a different field, it was a different universe. It was the system I had been looking for. I dropped out of film school the next semester to pursue biotech. The family reaction wasn't just disappointment. It was nuclear. "You're throwing away the Ramirez name," my father yelled, his face purple, "to go play in a lab with chemicals. I'm interested in the data, Dad, in the patterns." "There are no red carpets for data," he shot back. He told me I had 1 week to re-enroll, or I was cut off. He wasn't bluffing. It wasn't emotional, it was a business decision. I had defaulted on the family contract. When I stood my ground, my access to the family accounts was clinically severed. Victoria, ever the loyal daughter, was the one who delivered the final blow. She called me as I was packing my tiny apartment near campus. Her voice was cold, devoid of any sisterly comfort. "You're making a huge mistake, Elena," she said. "But I guess it's fine. Some people just aren't born to stand in the spotlight." I moved to Berkeley with $8,000 in my savings account and a prototype algorithm that I believed could change how we analyzed genetic data. Those early days weren't just hard, they were brutal. I lived in a tiny studio apartment that smelled like old carpet and desperation. I survived on energy bars and coffee, working 18-hour days, coding until my vision blurred. My company, Helix Gen, was just me, a folding table, and a laptop. About 6 months in, my savings were gone. The algorithm was powerful, but I didn't have enough processing power to run the simulations I needed to prove it. I was out of options. I was at the absolute bottom. I remember walking into a plasma donation center on University Avenue, The fluorescent lights hummed, and the air was sterile. I sat in a reclining chair, squeezing a stress ball, watching my own blood component fill a small bag. I made $90. 2 days later, I went back and did it again. I did that twice a week for 3 months. It wasn't for rent. It wasn't for food. It was to buy my first real server. That memory, the smell of the antiseptic, the cold feeling in my arm hits me as I hand my keys to the valet at the Pasadena Museum. Tonight is the 50th anniversary gala for Ramirez Pictures. The museum is flooded with light, and the entrance is a sea of designer gowns and camera flashes. I'm wearing a simple, well-tailored black suit. My hair is pulled back in a simple bun. I feel like I'm in costume. A scientist accidentally wandering into a movie premiere? As I walk in, I immediately feel myself shrink. It's an old, familiar feeling. The weight of the Ramirez legacy settles on my shoulders. I spot my parents near the grand staircase. My mother, Susan, elegant in a silver gown. Air kisses me. Elena, darling, you made it. Her eyes do a quick, critical scan of my suit. I'm so glad you found something to wear. You might have at least done your hair for tonight. Dear. My father, Michael, claps me on the shoulder, his attention already scanning the room for someone more important. Elena, good of you to come. Hejusturus vaguely. You still doing that? Computer job up in the Bay data entry. Is it? Something like that. Dad, I say. He nods, satisfied, and turns away to greet a studio head. Victoria is nowhere to be seen. She's saving her entrance. No doubt. I grab a glass of water from a passing waiter and find a quiet corner, bracing myself for the main event. The main event of the evening began, as it always did, with my father, Michael A., tapping a champagne flute with a spoon. A hush fell over the museum's main hall. Friends, family. He beamed. Welcome. 50 years of Ramirez Pictures. 50 years of art. Of legacy. He raised his glass. And no one embodies that legacy more than my daughter. Our future. Victoria. A spotlight found Victoria as she walked to the podium. She was stunning, wearing a liquid gold dress that probably cost more than my first server cluster. She radiated confidence. Every inch the Hollywood royal. She was, in every way, my father's daughter. She began her speech. Her voice practiced and smooth. She spoke beautifully about my grandfather's vision, about the magic of cinema and the unwavering commitment to excellence. Our family, she said, her eyes sweeping the room, understands that greatness requires sacrifice. It requires total, absolute commitment to the art. Herr Gase paused, finding me in my quiet corner. It was just for a second, but it was intentional. Not everyone has the courage for that commitment, she continued, looking away. Not everyone is born for the spotlight. Some people choose other paths, safer paths. I felt my jaw tighten. I wasn't hurt. I was fascinated. This was a performance. They choose little hobbies in labs, hiding behind numbers, she said, her voice dripping with dismissive pity. And we respect that. It takes all kinds. Of course. But legacy. Legacy is forged in the fire. It's for those brave enough not to hide. The room erupted in applause. My father looked like his heart would burst with pride. My mother dabbed her eye. Victoria, smiling her perfect, polished smile, stepped down from the stage and made a direct line for me. A fresh glass of champagne in her hand. Her husband, Matthew, was right behind her. Elena, she said, her voice now all sisterly concern. I'm so glad you came. She air-kissed the space next to my cheek. You look exhausted. Darling, she said, her eyes doing that same critical scan. My mother's had... Are you still struggling with that little science project? Matthew and I were just talking about it. Wondering how you're managing. I kept my expression neutral. I'm managing. Victoria. Are you? She pressed, tilting her head. She leaned in, lowering her voice just enough. So, only the three of us, and perhaps the couple standing awkwardly nearby, could hear. I hope you're not still. She paused, for dramatic effect. I hope you're not still selling plasma to pay your rent. The words hung in the air. Matthew winced. The couple next to us suddenly found the architecture fascinating. The silence was absolute. This was it, the peak of my humiliation, delivered with surgical precision by my perfect sister. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I felt a strange, cold clarity. The humiliation wasn't an emotion. It was a data point, the final one I needed. Before I could answer, a calm voice interrupted the silence. Excuse me, Miss Ramirez. I turned. It was David, the longtime family manager, a man who had worked for my father for 30 years. He was holding something. The silence that followed Victoria's question was heavy and sharp. Like broken glass, my father looked uncomfortable. My mother suddenly fascinated by a floral arrangement. Victoria just smiled, triumphant. And right into that silence stepped David. My father's manager for 30 years. He was a man of quiet dignity. Always polite. Always professional. He walked directly to me, ignoring Victoria and my parents completely. He was holding a magazine. Miss Elena, he said, his voice clear and formal, cutting through the tension. My apologies for the interruption. A special delivery just arrived for you. He held it out. Before I even took it, he gave a small, respectful bow. If I may, Miss Elena, he said quietly, I just want to say, personally, I've been following the work of E.R. Jen for some time. It's an honor. I took the magazine from his hand. It was an advanced copy of next month's Wired. On the cover was a professional, striking photo of me. The headline was printed in bold, white letters across my chest. The ghost in the genome meet E.R. Jen, the mysterious billionaire CEO of $25 billion Helix Gen. I heard a sharp intake of breath. It might have been my mother. Then, the distinct sound of a champagne flute shattering on the marble floor. My father had dropped his glass. I looked up slowly. The blood had drained from Victoria's face. Her perfect smile was frozen, a grotesque mask of disbelief. She was staring at the magazine, then at my face, then back again, as if her brain was refusing to process the data. My mother's hand was at her throat. Elena. What? What is this? It's some kind of joke, isn't it? Victoria finally found her voice, though it was a strained whisper. This is absurd. What is this? It's not a joke, I said. My voice was calm. It was clinical. I'm E.R. Jen. I have been from the beginning. Matthew, Victoria's venture capitalist husband, looked like he'd seen a ghost. Helix Gen. He stammered, his mind clearly racing through financial reports. Helix Gen is valued at $25 billion. They just rejected a $40 billion acquisition offer. All eyes turned to my father. He was just staring at me. His expression, a chaotic mix of confusion and something I couldn't or wouldn't name. But biotech, he finally managed, shaking his head. You were in film school. You don't know anything about that. This was the moment, the second, deeper reveal. Actually, Dad, you're wrong, I said, still calm, still quiet. You remember that algorithm I developed in my second year at USC? The one I was so excited about? He frowned, confused. That little project, that technical gimmick. That technical gimmick was an AI I designed to analyze complex visual patterns. I said, I used it to restore grandfather's original and damaged film reels from the 1950s. The ones your own specialists said were unsalvageable. I saved your legacy, Dad, and you dismissed it. I let that hang in the air for a beat. You told me it was a waste of the Ramirez name. So, I took my technical gimmick and I applied it to a much more interesting data set. I held up the magazine cover. The human genome. Victoria was the first to find her voice. It wasn't a whisper anymore. It was sharp, acidic. You lied, she hissed, her face a mask of pale fury. All these years, you stood there and you lied to us. You made us. You made me look like a fool. The accusation was so predictable. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and the anger I had expected to feel just wasn't there. In its place was a profound, sudden clarity. I suddenly realized Victoria didn't hate me. She hated my freedom. She was the one who had followed every rule. She had dutifully graduated from USC, taken the right studio job, married the right man, and said the right things at every party. She had sacrificed whatever quiet dreams she might have had. Maybe she wanted to make documentaries. I don't know, to become the perfect, compliant heir. She had willingly walked into the trap. And my success, on my own terms, in a field she didn't respect, proved that her entire sacrifice might have been for nothing. She didn't need me to be her sister. She needed me to be her failure. It was the only way she could justify her own choices. I didn't lie to you, Victoria, I said. My voice was quiet, and that seemed to make her even angrier. I just stopped correcting your assumptions. Assumptions? She shot back. You told us you were struggling. No, I said, shaking my head. You told me I was struggling. You told me I was selling plasma. You told me I was working on a little project. Not once. In over a decade. Did you ever ask me a single meaningful question about my work? You only ever asked about my failures. You enjoyed them too much to ever question if they were real. My father, Michael, finally seemed to reboot. He was a businessman. He understood power. And he was rapidly recalculating. He put his hand on my arm, his voice suddenly full of paternal pride. Elena, this is an incredible achievement. We always knew you had this potential. A true Ramirez, you're a builder. Like your grandfather. He was already rewriting history. He was already absorbing my success, making it part of the Ramirez legacy he had just told me I'd abandoned. The hypocrisy was so fast, so clean. It was almost impressive. Really? Dad, I asked. I wasn't emotional. I was just curious. You always knew. He beamed. Of course, we just had to push you a little. Because I remember things differently, I said, my tone still conversational, as if we were discussing data. I remember being told I was a waste of the Ramirez name. I remember being told I was chasing a technical gimmick. I remember being cut off. I remember Victoria telling me I wasn't born for the spotlight. The smile on my father's face faltered. My mother, Susan looked like she wanted to evaporate. I looked at my father, then my mother, then Victoria. I just have one question for you all, I said, and I want you to really think about it. Is my value different today than it was 10 minutes ago? Did I need to become a billionaire to finally earn your respect? 3 months later, the dust hasn't settled. It's just shifted. My relationship with my family is now a series of strategic negotiations. My father, Michael, calls me weekly. He doesn't ask about my life. He wants to discuss strategy, mostly pitching me on how I could leverage my new status to revitalize Ramirez Pictures. He sees me as a new asset, a new column on his balance sheet. Victoria sent a single, carefully worded email that used the word misunderstanding 4 times and apology 0 times. It was followed, a week later, by an introduction to her husband, Matthew, who wanted me to look at his new pitch deck. I've learned to set boundaries. I attend some family functions, but I leave when I want to. The old power dynamic, where my value was subject to their hourly approval, is gone. I am no longer the guest at their table. They are now, in many ways, applying for a seat at mine. But the real change happened last week. I held my own press conference, not at a museum, but at the Helix Gen headquarters. I stood on a stage and announced the launch of the Ramirez Future Legacy Fund. $500 million. I took the one word that my family had worshipped for 50 years, the word they had used as a weapon against me, and I reclaimed it. I announced the fund's mission. It would not be funding films or gala dinners. It would be providing seed capital, lab space, and mentorship to those who needed it most. Specifically, to researchers in open-source genetic science, to disruptive data-driven projects, and, most importantly, to female founders from backgrounds that, like mine, didn't come with the right name or the right connections. I wasn't destroying their legacy. I was finally making it meaningful. The journey from selling plasma to pay for a server to the cover of Wired taught me a lot. But the most important lesson is this: family approval is a privilege, not a prerequisite. True success isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right, on your own terms. The best revenge isn't just success. It's building a legacy so large and so meaningful that it dwarfs the one that rejected you. Have you ever had to define success on your own terms? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that their value is not determined by other people's opinions.